Professor Ian Wright, welcome to Project 100, mate. And by the way, you are an Associate Professor of Environmental Science at the University of Western Sydney, or what do you call themselves? Western Sydney University these days.
Yes.
Slightly different. It used to be UWS, it's now WSU. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And I first studied there when it was Hawkesbury Ag College.
Oh, that's going back a while.
I'm getting on a bit.
Yeah, but it's funny, most people don't know this, but or at least the universities I know, I was at the University of New South Wales, that was a tech college.
Yep.
In the late 60s, and when I first went to university in 73, it became a university. I think it only just become a university. UTS, University of Technology, was a tech
Yes.
here in the city, in the middle of the city, and University of West Sydney is one of the great universities in New South Wales, as far as I'm concerned, in the state of New South Wales, or in this country for that matter. I have a lot of affection for that university. Maybe you could just quickly tell us a little bit about your research areas and your current role.
Sure. So I currently work in the School of Science. I teach and I do research, but I'm into water and any aspect of human relationship with water. Flood, drought, pollution is a big thing. Recreation, swimming quality. I'm just fascinated by water and people.
As in seawater as well?
Seawater, freshwater. I love water. I'm a bit of a Labrador. I love jumping in water.
Well, that's amazing because Australians love water. Like, we're surrounded by water.
Yeah.
We don't have too many inland rivers, or we have some inland rivers, but we are the driest continent on the world too, of course. But nonetheless, you cover all aspects of water, and you teach in relation to all aspects of water at university.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I'm from the water industry, so I spent nearly 20 years working at Sydney Water, and I worked in the catchments, Warragamba catchment, science labs. But I'm fascinated by water and people, and it is such a big feature of the Australian culture anywhere. Like people dying to get a water view, or drought defining, whether the animals live or, people thrive. It's just fascinating.
And I'm really interested to talk to you because this show's about longevity and doing all those things we can to give ourselves a fighting chance to live as long as we possibly can, as well as we possibly can. And these are sort of my private inquiries with experts like you about things that may cause difficulty in relation to living longer or better. And clearly we're made up of a lot of water as human beings. I don't know, 70, 80%, whatever it is. And lots of minerals that go into water. It's not just water. It's not just H2O, but it's a lot of other stuff in there. But equally, there's a lot of other stuff in there that's not good for us.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk to you about some of those things. Let's just start with the quality of Australian water, just generally. Let's not pick on Sydney, just Australian water generally. I mean, how does it rank relative to the rest of the world?
The big division is: are you talking regional or capital city?
That's interesting.
There's the big difference.
Let's do metro.
Metro. Okay, then we have another division. Are we talking South Australia, Western Australia, or just the southeast? So the water of Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Hobart, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I wouldn't have no hesitation.
On a world scale.
On a world scale, absolutely, right up there.
Wow.
South Australia, bit average. Perth, very average.
Really?
Depending on the different supply districts. And Perth, it's got 2 desal plants, third's about to start. They run flat out.
So desal being salination plants.
Desalination.
So they're not using dam water accumulated from rain or from whatever rivers. They're sucking it out of the sea, and they're taking the salt and everything else out of it and turning it into drinking water. Is that what you mean?
That they are. And Perth, I could talk for 5 hours on Perth. I mean, its rainfall has dropped about 10%, and that's equated to roughly an 80 to 90% reduction in stream flow. Because it's flat and hot, it's just changed that balance. So the Perth surface water supply has done that. It's dropped down, and the population's gone up. And Perth doesn't just supply Perth; it also supplies the goldfields and the wheat belt town. They look after the region, and that is an economic powerhouse. So they have had
for Australia, by the way.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. And we want them to stay part of
Yeah,
Australia.
yeah.
We can't afford for them to secede. But their water stress is enormous. And Western Australia, in general, their drinking water, nearly everyone in Western Australia would have a water filter, it's particularly in
Is that
regional
right?
areas. Yeah, it's extremely salty and there's all kinds of other problems.
Can we just talk on desalination? Because I know we got a desal plant in around down near Kurnell somewhere, or
We
we
do.
did have one. We,
Yeah,
we
we
still
do.
got one, yeah. Because I remember when I think it was about 2019 or 2018, we had a fairly significant drought, and the
Yes.
Warragamba Dam got very low.
Yes.
Can't remember what percentage, but it was at a bad, because I remember you couldn't turn your hoses on and stuff like that in the
Yes,
backyard.
correct.
And they started talking about, well, I think that's when the desal plant started to sort of kick in a bit, and they started talking about bringing other desalination plants in. Why is desalination water not so good for you?
They have to actually put minerals back in it because it is so pure. There's so much H2O.
It's just
It,
H2O sort of thing.
yeah, it is. It would actually demineralize us. So, like the calcium will actually leach from our teeth and bones. So they have to. It's actually quite aggressive water, as pure water that they produce. So they actually will put more minerals back in, particularly things like calcium, and then it's more healthy. But it provides, if it's flat out, it will provide 15% of Sydney's water demand.
Right.
It's nothing like
West Australia.
Perth, yeah. But as our former Premier Bob Carr, he called it bottled electricity. They use gargantuan amount of electricity
Right.
to push that salt water through membranes to get the pure H2O.
So it's very inefficient environmentally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, very, very. But it's like having a spare tire.
Yeah.
It's really good to have that if you're in an emergency and you need that. It's a great thing to have.
Well, that's interesting because when you look at some of those Arabic countries or in the Emirates, those sorts of areas, and you go there and it's like desert. They don't have a lot of rainfall. They definitely don't have many mountains and or rivers, and they're probably 100% desalination.
I expect they'd be
Economies.
pretty close to that.
And
Yeah.
What you're saying is actually made me think about something. So when you, let's call it, filter water to take the salt out, for argument's sake,
Yes.
so it's drinkable. The filtration process of water effectively demineralizes the water
It does.
and just turns it into, like, let's call it pure, two atoms of hydrogen, one atom of oxygen,
Yes.
effectively H2O. Now, if we drink pure water in its purest form, in other words, no minerals, tell me what happens. You said it starts to demineralize us. Is that because the atoms are looking for other electrons in your body and therefore find a carbon atom which has a few electrons that can be donated to the oxygen or the hydrogen and it actually sucks it away?
It's essentially like osmosis. So you've got almost no calcium in that water. We have lots of calcium in us, so it will start to go into the water to equalize that reaction.
But why does the calcium leave my teeth or bones, for example, and go and attach itself to? It doesn't attach itself to water. It attaches itself to either hydrogen and oxygen, I guess.
It more equalizes the reaction of the calcium in the blood and the calcium in the digestive system.
Right. It's not bones. It's coming out of calcium in blood, but
of your whole system.
Right.
Yeah. And because we're always replacing calcium, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Plenty of calcium in your diet. And most of our natural water has pretty small amounts, but it's a really important source of calcium. So people that, for example, have triple desalinated water, and I read about these systems all the time, they are advised to remineralize it with calcium, magnesium.
What about these people who, for example, have a water filter at home? And I've heard of this, and I'm about to put a water filter in my house, but home. But I have one in my office. I presume those filters they're taking out all the rubbish out, or allegedly taking all the toxins out, but they probably take everything else out as well, do they?
No,
They don't.
No, a fairly fundamental filter will take out solid particles, even at really, really small, micron sort of level.
That's heavy metals type.
Yeah, heavy metals and small cells of algae and things like that are naturally part of most waterways. But to do something like desalination, they use absolutely tiny, tiny little holes that they basically push through. These are the membranes. They push water through.
Right. So it's pushed through as opposed to sort of just soaking through.
Exactly.
It's pushing, getting pushed. It's getting forced through, which is probably where the power's involved because they've got a turbine or something pushing it or turning it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think a water filter is a good idea. But one of my most common complaints when I travel around Australia is chlorine, and particularly if you go to a country town, you often smell it.
Yeah.
If you run a shower,
I can smell it on me.
And if you boil the water or age the water, even just put it in a jug and put it in the fridge, it's volatile.
What's
and
that mean?
It'll go to a gas form.
The chlorine?
The chlorine
and
will
escape.
And then you're drinking much, much lower. And that's, it's largely the taste. Sorry, it's largely the smell of chlorine, and smell is associated with taste.
Yeah.
But also, chlorine's not, it basically kills pathogenic organisms. That's why we have it in water. But you don't need it in the water that you drink in the fridge. So even if you just boil water or age it in the fridge,
you get rid of the chlorine.
Anyone that keeps fish knows about it. They know that you do not fill a fish tank directly from the tap.
Oh, right.
Because of the sudden shock that the fish can get from the chlorine.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I might just park, for example, for a moment, the example I just gave a moment ago in relation to filtration, because I have heard of filtration systems which actually remineralize the water for you once you've filtered it. But I want to park that and come back to you and ask you that question in a moment. If we just go back to water that's, we're not talking about desalination water here, but let's talk about New South Wales for argument's sake, Brisbane, Queensland, Victoria, where the water's coming out of dams and rivers and what have you, coming out of the sky, dropping down from the sky. And I do want to park Tasmania for a moment because I do know that in Tasmania they have a CSIRO outpost there which measures the particulates in the sky in a place called down south of.
I think it's Cape Grim.
Cape Grim, yeah, and they measure it there, and allegedly the atmosphere has the lowest amount of particulates of any place in the world.
I've heard that, yes,
and therefore by expansion, any rain that falls through that atmosphere could be the cleanest water in the world. Could be. Well, I'll come back to that in a moment.
Yes.
But so let's just look at New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria for the moment, and we understand that desalination poses different issues. So the water falls from the sky or runs off from the land as a result of raining, or comes out of the river and sits in a dam, and the water's in the dam. And if I walked up to one of the dams and just stuck my head in the water, started drinking it, it wouldn't be that good idea, would it?
I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
Generally, no, it wouldn't be a great idea. But if you were, if you didn't have your water bottle with you and it was a hot day, I'd do it.
Yeah,
I'd do it.
Yeah, you would do it.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. So what are the things though that might be a problem for me before the water comes, as opposed to water just coming out of the tap coming from Warragamba Dam?
Did you live in Sydney in the 1990s when we had the crypto incident? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember it. Yes.
So cryptosporidium, a protozoan. That's sometimes called the bushwalking disease. So if you go to a popular bushwalking area, they don't have a lot of public toilets, so people
take a leak. Yeah,
take a leak behind the bush. That you'd be exposed potentially to Cryptosporidium giardia. Those sort of, and there's sometimes nearly all mammal species have some kind of bug in them like that. So that's why, if you can boil the water, that's a good thing to do, and that's
because you're killing off the bacteria.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, the bacteria and other pathogenic organisms,
right?
Viruses,
but they're things that are alive.
Yes.
So the boiling basically boils them, kills them.
But I did a bushwalk the other day in Coringa Chase, and I knew the national park, and there was water dripping. Now I didn't drink, but I knew if I needed to, I would have drunk that. I would have been taking a risk with Cryptosporidium, and I have had it. Because my son had it about 15 years ago. He had kind of uncontrollable vomiting and diarrhea, so we had it tested. He had it. I had the same disease. I wasn't tested, but I know I had it, and it's very, very unpleasant. But it's more an unpleasantness rather than something that seriously threatens your health.
So in other words, if you desperately need water, it's more important to get sick and drink the water than it is to not have the water whatsoever. Because our body needs we can go without food for a while, for quite a few days, but we can't go out without water for many days.
No, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
So and hydration is probably one of the most important things for us as humans.
Yes.
Walking in a biological sense,
Yes.
complete hydration. The water's at the dam, and if you have to drink, you could drink. You could stick your head in and have a mouthful of it. But what do they do? What does Sydney Water do, for example? What do they add to that water before it comes through our tap?
The big one is chlorine.
Right.
And they often add that with chlorine mixed with ammonia, chloramination, and it makes the chlorine last a long time, because then and they filter it, and they add flocculants so that binds a lot of the contaminants that then fall to the bottom.
Right.
But
does that happen in the dam, Ian, or does it? No,
they have filtration plants.
Right.
And they're basically, they look kind of like big, giant Olympic swimming pools, big pools of water. So that allows any solid particles to fall. So sedimentation.
That's as a result of flocculation.
And they assist that with flocculation. Yeah. And then they chlorinate. So then it joins this myriad of pipelines, thousands and thousands of kilometres, some of which can be approaching 100 years old.
Yeah.
And they add a bit of chlorine so that if anything enters that, any contaminated particle, the chlorine will kill it.
Right. And what's the property of chlorine that it kills live contaminants?
It is a toxin.
Right.
But it's a toxin we are tough. Humans are a tough species. We can cope with, but organisms can't. And it's one of the things that has allowed us to live in big cities.
Right.
We only worked this out from about the 1850s, the germ theory of disease. Dr. John Snow, in the cholera outbreaks of London, worked out it wasn't the odours of contamination that was making us sick and giving people cholera. It was contamination in the water, and specifically human waste, fecal waste.
Right.
And chlorine was something that we learnt to add in the early 1900s that has enabled us to grow really big. And so it helps control any possible contamination.
Population growth you're talking about, yeah.
Population growth.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, we really couldn't live in cities. Once they got to about 100,000, disease spread like wildfire.
Wow. And chlorine was the solution.
Big part of that, absolutely. Clean and separating clean water from wastewater, both rubbish, food scraps, human waste, animal waste, keeping the two as far apart as possible.
Yeah, so reducing the likelihood or the probability of some of these wastes actually getting into the water, notwithstanding the fact that chlorine could probably clean it up, but just separation of the two.
Absolutely. So, this is a really old part of Sydney, Darlinghurst. I've got pictures of, the water supply prior to 1888 was often a tank. We didn't have highly advanced tanks, so they were often barrels. So people often dug holes. So they dug wells. And often they had right beside it the latrine.
Huh.
So there you had, and
the latrine then was a hole in the ground.
The latrine was a hole in the ground, like a septic tank without any of the engineering.
Yeah.
So they didn't know that the germ theory of disease wasn't really accepted until the late 1800s and early 1900s. And then we learnt to keep the two as separate as possible, which is why most of our water catchments are very controlled in terms of keep them as naturally vegetated and as much waste out of it as possible.
As in a long way away from all that sort of stuff.
Exactly, yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Then I can ask you this question. So the water's dammed. There's potential for different bugs to be in that water. They hit it with a bit of chlorine in these settlement areas. All the bad stuff sinks to the bottom, and they clean that out or whatever. And then the stuff that's sitting at the top, we'll come back to what other things that might be added to water. But that water then goes along the pipe system, and let's say we're here in Darlinghurst, and it was Darlinghurst is one of the earlier parts of Sydney. The pipes were made of what?
Some of the pipes were made from wood, believe it or not.
Wood,
but yes,
timber.
Yeah, timber.
Serious?
There were, yeah, and I worked at Sydney Water for a long time, so often in the staff magazine there was footage of another timber water pipe. Some of the big reservoirs around here, like Centennial Park, some of those have timber timbers basically holding the roof of reservoirs. Um, it, Cast iron was extremely popular. Cast iron is actually brittle, but very strong and long lasting. And then, steel pipes,
So the pipes
concrete
coming in.
pipes,
So the pipes coming into this building, for example, would they be steel?
almost certainly. Yeah,
So-
and often lined in plastic or even concrete.
right.
A whole series of things. The science of what creates a pipe that can last decades and decades and decades is quite well advanced.
Right.
And once they cracked that in about the 1880s, we had a fantastic water supply. And here, Darlinghurst, I mean, we're not far from the tank stream.
Yep.
Then Centennial Park, that was called Busby's Bore, and it was dug by convicts from the swamps of Centennial Park, and it came pretty much along Oxford Street. And then Botany Swamps near the airport.
Yep.
Sydney kept
Which you can
outgrowing.
still see.
You still see it.
Yep.
It's basically the golf course.
Yep.
Water traps.
Mm.
And then they went Upper Nepean, and water gravitated from the Nepean River with a series of incredible engineering, canals, siphons, tunnels. Still works today. 1880s, gravitates all the way from the Upper Nepean River, not far from Appin.
Which means it doesn't need to be pumped.
Oh, absolutely incredible. Still works today.
Yeah, yeah.
Incredible engineering. And then we started building dams, because the technology of building dams, they need to be really safe.
Yeah.
So they, Avon, Cataract, Cordo, Warrenora, and then eventually Warragamba in 1960 was built. Totally pushed concrete to the limits. And at the time, they were some of the biggest water supply dams in the world, because most parts of the world just extract water from the river.
Yeah.
But because we don't have reliable flow, Australia had to rely much, much, much more on storage dams.
And so the water's flowing through perhaps concrete or steel lined with concrete, perhaps plastic.
Yes.
It's already got the chlorine in it. Are there any other points at which contaminants can get into the water, or is it pretty much contained at the dam level, so to speak? In other words, is de-risked in terms of contaminants getting into the water between that and the time you turn on your tap?
A whole series of points. It's a really good point. You've got a lot of protected catchments, particularly the best water in Sydney, but lies between here, Sutherland, and but the southern suburbs of Sydney, Sutherland, Warrenora Reservoir, and then Avon, Cataract, Cordo. That is mostly protected catchments between us and Wollongong.
Right.
And they're mostly naturally vegetated. People are fenced out. You can only go in with permission to do that. Unless you're a coal mine, I'd rather not talk about that. But those catchments just keep providing water. It's like the ultimate natural recycled product.
It's because it soaks through the ground or whatever you call it.
Yes.
And ends up in the dam.
The catchment. And then there's, evaporation, clouds, rains, that purifies, that water cycle purifies it each time. And so controlling the catchment is one, controlling access, keeping it as natural as possible, keeping any pollution creating activities out of there. Then it goes into the pipeline where it is treated. And
with chlorine,
with chlorine, filtered, and its next part is monitoring all the way.
Yeah, so there'd be monitoring places, like every however many kilometres or whatever it is, just to see what the quality is past that.
Absolutely, and for something sounds really crazy, but one of the main qualities of water that's measured is the clarity. Clear water. The clearer it is, it needs to be really, really clear. We call that turbidity, which is a scattering of light.
Yep.
Really clear water, that's like a fantastic surrogate for the health of the water. So they even would study that continuously at multiple points. And if the water goes cloudy, bang, switches off, battery of tests, what's going on here.
Right. So so when it arrives, it comes out your tap. What are the things that would make us sit up and go, well, hang on a minute, the water's no good. Well, there's something wrong with the water. I should get this water tested. What would you say if that happened to your tap?
I'm really used to working in rural Australia, so I see bad water all the time. The nose, the big one.
Yeah.
And also the site.
Right.
Discoloration or a funny odor.
Yeah. And it's not just a chlorine smell. It could be a sulfur smell.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you go to small country towns, you will often find, and everyone there might locally know, oh yeah, we've got sort of a peaty, swampy sort of system, so it's got a bit more of an earthy smell, a bit like wet hessian or something like that. Sulfur, if it's closer to the coast, but yeah, I also study water tanks in farms.
Yep.
And 1 million people in Australia use water tanks.
Yep.
They have massive variation. And my mum used to have a farm until 10 years ago, and it was the colour of dilute tea. So,
but still drinkable.
We started to bring water from Sydney.
Yeah.
And it really offended Mum. And I wasn't enough of a son to clean out her water tank on the farm. I was usually doing other things. But sometimes we started to get a bit sick. And then one day we went with my wife's dog, and the dog got diarrhea, and I thought, that's it, I'm not drinking this water anymore.
So if that water, if you shower in it, you don't drink it. Let's say you don't drink, but you shower in it. It can, through osmosis, you get affected by that sort of water. Can somehow get through your skin into your system?
Probably not. That's a good question. Water was actually, it was beautiful field to shower in. Actually, most tank water is incredibly dilute,
sort of soft,
very soft. Exactly, very, very soft water. But most water tanks, I publish research on this. No one tests their water in rural Australia generally. Very few people clean out their tanks or their gutters. And
it's because the water's come from the roof and the gutter.
Yep.
Into the tank.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know enough now that if I go to a farm, I have a quick look at the roof, and if it's got a tree overhanging it, I think,
yep,
birds roosting in that.
Yep.
That's going to go onto the tank.
Yep. That's interesting. So just for the sake of people who do have tank water, I mean, what sort of technology should they be looking at in relation to the water before it comes out of the tank, or before it goes into the tank, or once it's in the tank? Are there technologies around now that they can use to effectively purify their water?
Yeah, there's heaps to do. There's heaps you can do.
Right.
Water filters are a good idea, but there's also a fantastic thing it's like a first flush diversion. So after a heavy bit of rain, essentially that flushes the whatever dust might build up on the roof or leaves, the gutters, and that will then divert that away from your water tank and then flick.
So the first lot gets thrown out.
Exactly. Absolutely. And then the rest goes into the tank.
Right.
But people should get their tank cleaned out every 5 to 10 years.
Right.
And attend to the gutters, remove any branches that are overhanging the roof. And I've done a lot of that with my family.
And are there pills or whatever you want to, some sort of thing you should be throwing into the water as well? Like,
I have heard of people that have done that.
Yep.
Often your local council can give advice on that.
Right.
I have heard of some, even if it can breed mosquitoes, believe it or not, people actually used to pour a bit of kerosene on the top of water tanks.
Wow.
Because
that's where the mozzies are.
That's where the mozzies are, and the kerosene's light, so it floats above it.
On top, it's lighter than water.
But if the level goes down, I have also heard
you're drinking kerosene.
Yeah.
And can I just talk for a moment? Because I just give you one example, and if you don't mind for a second. So I have a farm, and my farm, fortunately for me, the town water tank is just on the other side of the road above me and my farm, and they have an easement through my property down to the town, which is 8-9 kilometres away. Fortunately for me, so through that easement, there's big water pipes go through my joint, and so I'm connected to town water.
Yep.
I'm effectively connected to that water tank. But my house is connected. The connection is a rubber hose. It looks like plastic or rubber, something like that. And it's probably about 60 centimeters wide, and it's a blue and black type of stripy type thing. Anyway, it sits under the ground, but I noticed part of it was exposed to sunlight. I don't know what the reason for that was, but do I run any? What are the sort of risk profiles I should be thinking about in relation to that water, particularly if I drink it? That going through a plastic hose. Is there some issue about the plastics?
That's actually a really good question. We have replaced a section of water pipe at home from a copper pipe to plastic, and I've had the same question. I don't know. I don't know. It's a really good
Is
question.
there something you should worry about or think about, or therefore, or maybe not worry about it, just put a filter on the end of it? Because I mean, because we keep hearing about plastics in our
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
and whenever everything, pretty much. And I mean, I know, and I keep it again. It's obviously gravity fed because I'm at the sort of halfway down the mountain and the water's flowing through, and I just keep imagining water rushing through this plastic pipe, and water. I don't know whether or not it's has any like erosion type qualities, but I imagine it does. And if there's little bits of plastic that can erode off the plastic, particularly if it's exposed to the sunlight, um, whether or not it's ending up into my tap and therefore into my system. Should we be thinking about, just as a safety precaution, should people think about perhaps having a filter? And can you effectively filter out microplastics?
Yeah, yes, you definitely can. I'd have to say my gut feeling it would be the lowest risk I could think of
Right.
with the plastics, and because many water pipes actually start to film. They call it a biofilm, small cells of algae and even minerals build up on the inside.
Line the inside of
They'd start to line it. I am more concerned with things like, and I've seen the data, but things like copper pipe. So I've been sampling. I'm in the middle of publishing a paper right now on home water tanks, and copper is often leached out of copper pipes. That's the basis of our household pipes.
Is that bad for us?
At very, very high levels,
Right.
yes. But I wouldn't open your tap and put it into a fish tank. It'd probably kill the fish.
Yeah.
So we see from a water tank, we see the concentration go up. That's not the problem. The problem is the solder that was often used is made out of lead.
Right.
And even if you've got a galvanized iron roof, when they mined
do.
the zinc used for the galvanizing, lead comes with it.
Right.
And the flashing, at the top and around
Yep.
chimneys and things,
Yep.
that's
That's
often
lead.
pure lead.
Yeah.
So
And I do have a chimney.
I
don't have tank water, but you're right. If I had tank water, it'd be running off the lead, like dripping off, flashing off the lead flashing where the chimney is, and going into the gutter, and then going from the gutter into the tank, and then from the tank into me.
It builds, yes, and it builds up at the bottom of tanks. There's this layer. I've sampled hundreds and hundreds of tanks now. This sediment layer, and it's between probably 3 and 40 mils deep. And if it stays there, that's fine. But just about anyone in Australia would know that as it gets dry, like as we came up to the black summer, levels drop. And then if you expose that and think about rainfall pouring in, it stirs up.
Yep.
So my mum had a farm near Orange, and you couldn't keep clothes white in a drought because the sediment in a tank was stirred up.
Right.
And everything went like a mild ochre color. And I've detected lead concentrations in this water sediment mix down the bottom of tanks over 1,000 times the guideline. And
Whoa.
lead is really dangerous, particularly for children, because it's a cumulative neurotoxin. So it will reduce the IQ of developing brains. It's really horrible stuff. And even the washers, like galvanized iron roofs, often had lead washers, believe it or not. I actually didn't know this till a couple of years ago.
Where the screw went into the frame.
And it was lead because that was inert and it didn't react and then rust out.
Didn't rust, yeah.
But the trouble is that builds and builds and builds and builds, and we have it's a real problem.
And you got hundreds and hundreds of these washers because
Yes,
they're
washers.
they're fixing the roof, the steel roof, or wherever it is, in lots of different places. It just doesn't fix once; it fixes hundreds of places all over the joint.
Absolutely, and I've sampled hundreds and hundreds of tanks now, and often the older tanks, the outlet is right at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. That's where where that stuff is.
So I'm working on that at the moment, and I'd rather not name the town. It's inland New South Wales, but we've picked 2 towns that are in mining areas, just concerned about dust, metal impacts from dust.
Blowing on the roof, and then when it rains, yep.
And there is a relationship with that. I share this stuff with the EPA and health and council and communities. But we went to a non-mining town with no mines anywhere near it, and we got huge concentrations of lead in this sediment water layer. And so we now got to go back and tell people you've really got to spend, I don't know how much, probably $500. And it's a bit like vacuuming a pool. They can clean out your tank without having to pump out the water tank. But one of these towns has a town water supply that most of the locals told me they don't drink it and they don't even put it on their plants because they will wither and die. So it's really salty.
Salty.
It's very salty. So one of them said, in fact, I've seen the I was looking at it the other day, we only use town water to flush the toilet. We only drink tank water.
Wow. And is the reason it's salty because the water table?
Yeah, groundwater supply.
Groundwater, yeah.
Groundwater is generally more salty. And if you go to Northern Territory or Northern WA, chronic problem.
Wow. If in terms of the lead issue, are there filtration systems that will filter lead out?
That's where you have to go reverse osmosis.
Right.
So that
as your filtration system, as opposed to a filter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's good luck buying a filter because the marketing behind it is pretty confusing.
Totally. That's why I'm asking the question, because I've been watching and looking at these things and I get a bit confused.
I personally would go for reverse osmosis and a cartridge that you could change.
Yeah.
Maintenance is really important, but there are fantastic resin-based filters and carbon-based filters. But that's kind of not my specialty.
Yep.
But boy, oh boy, the marketing is strong. It feels
Totally.
a bit Amway.
So if we come back to the metros then, for example, where we don't have to deal with tank water, although I guess perhaps some people probably do try to. There probably are people who do install tank water these days, particularly in new developments, because they don't want to use town water. But let's assume most people don't do that at the moment. Most of us are drinking water out of the catchments. And we have, as you mentioned, a chlorine, which is there to kill all the various bacteria and things that can hurt you. But chlorine doesn't get rid of pesticides, herbicides, other things. What other things apart from bacteria that can harm us? What other things are we looking at that could be in the water?
Big one is metals, but that's tested, and with all the filtration, dilution, and the test results.
Well, when you say metals, I mean, it sounds like I'm gonna get a bit of a spoon or something. But we're talking about, and where does this come from? It's minute, micro level. Yeah. What are we talking about? Lead. What are we talking about?
Lead, mercury, cadmium, zinc.
Where do they come from?
A lot of it comes from in the Earth's crust.
Right.
So
naturally occurring.
Yeah. So the beautiful colours of sandstone around Sydney, that's iron and manganese.
Yep.
And a bit of aluminium. That's really, really common in the Earth's crust. Even some stuff like barium and strontium, quite common. So with, it's a dusty country, with that dust, whether it goes into roofs or into the
top of the
soil,
dam.
and as a lot of our water filters down through groundwater and then comes out of spring. So we got lots of metals and it's fine. I mean, it's good we've got iron in our blood because that helps us get the oxygen around. That's why it's red.
Yeah.
So a lot of metals are good, but some of them, like lead, really bad. Mercury bioaccumulates really, really bad. Others, even like manganese at high levels, that's bad, but nothing like the concentration of lead, because lead, mercury, we bring it into our bodies, very hard to excrete it.
And so does the water service, the people who look after water, in our case Sydney Water, for example, do they extract that, or is there a little bit of that in your tap water anyway?
Oh, there'll be a little bit there, but they measure it, and I'm the sort of geek that looks that stuff up.
Yeah.
And the levels are so low.
Is it a matter of though low levels is okay, or is it a matter, or is it? But I'll put this to you: is it a matter that no level's good? Because we used to get told it's okay to have 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day, and it's sort of good for you. Now they're saying no alcohol, and I've talked to lots of neurologists and people, cardiologists, neurologists, etc., and have one sitting right there last week, who effectively said no amount of alcohol is all right for you.
Oh,
It's poisonous, and
yeah.
it's a poison. And I guess no amount of lead's good for you because it's a poison.
You're exactly right. And there is a bit of a game of tennis going on with guidelines.
Yep.
So at the moment, I know our guideline in Australia for lead is 10 micrograms, 10 parts per billion micrograms per litre. For Canada, it's 5.
Right.
They generally only, the more we learn, the more we realise, actually, that is a bit more dangerous than we realised. Lead, I think the US EPA have recognised that there is no known safe level of lead.
So in other words, 0 is better.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
because it accumulates.
exactly.
Same as mercury.
Yes. I mean, we had leaded petrol up until
Yep.
1985, phased out in, I think, about 1990. And I can't imagine what my IQ would have been if we didn't have leaded fuel. It reduces IQ. It has a very negative effect on the developing brain. But we only know that after we've had lots and lots of people live and go through their life.
So we don't, as a result of longitudinal studies.
Exactly.
Yeah. So therefore, is it fair to say then, irrespective of what's an acceptable level at a government level, even though, and given that other governments in other places probably through abundance of caution are reducing what is acceptable, we might be playing catch up, whatever. Is it better off to say, and I don't know if it's possible, but to put a filter system that just filters it all out? Or is that possible?
It is. It is possible. Yeah. And I think you can get double and even triple desalination units. It's a big market out there. You've got some that will, plug in and sit on the bench. Some that can actually
at home, you're talking about?
At home,
Yep.
or put into under the sink by a plumber, so that you could have a little tap just for drinking water. That double or triple desalinates it.
Desalinate meaning demineralize.
Demineralize, yes.
Yeah. Taking all these metals out.
Yes.
As opposed, it's not salt, because it's not.
Salt comes out too.
Yeah, but but when you say desalination, it's not take salt out so much as you're using the desalination, let's call it process, to take metals out as well.
Anything.
And why
out.
are they called heavy metals?
It's just metals. So
yeah. But why do they call it heavy metals? I mean, like everyone says, "Oh, heavy metals." It's like they're heavy, like
some are like
lead
and iron. But then you've got some really light metals as well, like aluminium and lithium. So
which you probably don't want in there either, because so this sort of brings me to the topic of PFAS.
PFAS, yes.
What the hell is PFAS? What are we talking about here? What is
it? It's a man-made. It's a group of man-made chemicals. They're synthetic chemicals. They're made in a lab, an industrial process. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and they're everywhere. And they're brilliant creatures of the lab and industry, because they're heat resistant, moisture, grease resistant, long lasting, and they're in nearly everything.
But what is PFAS? Like we talk about, is it plastic? I don't even know what it is.
Good point. Probably the only one that we can all visualize would be Teflon. So Teflon is a type of PFAS. It is a group of man-made chemicals.
That's the stuff on your fry pan.
Fry pan, yes, non-stick fry pan.
Yeah.
And they're a small chain of carbon atoms coupled with fluorine, and it's one of the strongest bonds. Brilliant at its intended purpose, but as a waste product, it doesn't break down, and a bit like lead, bioaccumulates. And it's got this other thing, again like lead and mercury, it biomagnifies. So the further you go up the food chain, the higher the concentration. And humans are right up the food chain.
Yep.
It's in all of us.
And is it in our water?
Yes, but there's limited data. And in fact, in Sydney, they only started testing for it middle of last year.
Because I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is correct, it could be incorrect, but the US has a much lower tolerance to PFAS in their water than we do.
They do.
So what does that mean? Can you just explain that one?
Oh, this is just, I find this absolutely fascinating. They lead the world in awareness of PFAS. They lead the world in terms of monitoring and treatment, but probably because they've also led the world in the degree of contamination.
Because they probably produce most of it.
Yes. Their companies, and the two big companies, 3M and DuPont, there's other companies involved, but they produced all these products. And because they had the manufacturing, these are hotspots of waste that radiated out. And it's an extraordinarily dangerous substance. And the concentration, even at the most incredibly low levels, it's really dangerous.
What sort of things is it going to does it do to us? Like,
The list is fairly long, but it has an effect on it's been associated with an effect on the immune system, a whole series of cancers, changes to reproductive cycles, changes to birth weight, cancer risk. It goes on and on. But it also depends on who you ask. So if you ask some of the medical establishment and bureaucrats in Australia, it is not as dangerous as the literature and the policies from America suggest. It is truly a bizarre space, and the policy of this is changing very, very quickly.
so do you use a fry pan with non-stick, or you use stainless steel or something along, or ceramic? What do you use?
I don't want to start a domestic dispute, but there was one in our house that raged. We got rid of our Teflon-coated frying pan, so I've got stainless steel. But we do still have some Teflon-coated. We've got a sandwich maker, and it's just brilliant. So that still has Teflon on it. So Scotch card, I got a car in the late 80s, and I had the Scotch card put on it. That's a type of PFAS
really?
chemical. Yeah.
Of course it does, because it resists water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's basically a sealant.
Exactly.
Which is what Teflon is. Teflon seals.
Yes, it seals, and it resists staining, it resists grease and heat. It's a brilliant substance, except when it gets into water or food, and it's in all of us.
Yeah.
Bureau of Statistics, believe it or not, produced May this year. They've got the results of 6,000 or 7,000 Australians, and it's building up in all of us.
Oh, you can test in the blood.
Yep. And we lacked that reference data. So you can do a blood test. Medicare won't pay for it. Health funds won't pay for it. It costs about $500. And the only communities I know that have been tested are, for example, the Victorian firefighters, because occupationally they trained with firefighting foam and got covered in it. And I think he's in a commissioner now, Mick Tisbury of the Victorian firefighters, worked out there was like a cancer cluster or an illness cluster. Went to a lot of firefighters' funerals and then realised, hey, this chemical they're talking about in the States is in the firefighting foam. And that's the only population I know that has systematically been tested for PFAS chemicals.
And PFAS is not a chemical, is a bunch of chemicals.
It is a group.
It's a group of things.
Thousands.
And a big group of things. And I didn't realize you could get tested for that. I get a blood test for that. Obviously, Medicare's not going to pay for it, but that's one worth thinking about. In terms of prevention of PFAS, apart from sort of maybe ditching your Teflon-coated fry pans or whatever, does it include, for example, plastic utensils? Is that
That's a good question.
a PFAS?
I don't know. I do know that it was used in a lot of takeaway coffee cups.
Yeah.
Again, heat, moisture, grease resistant. Takeaway pizza boxes. It was used in shampoos, a lot of healthcare products.
Really?
Cabling.
And shampoos?
Shampoos.
Wow.
It's got so many
And the
qualities.
hair is porous, which is it's a real problem.
Oh, yeah. Look, the big one, though, without any doubt, is water and drinking water.
Right.
And again, that comes from the States, because a lot of their water is from groundwater, and it heads, once it gets into the groundwater, it's incredibly difficult to get rid of. It binds to soil, binds to clay, binds to proteins
in us.
in us, but in the environment as well. So I've sampled it up in Medlow Bath, where the Blue Mountains has been contaminated, and John D, local campaigner, who's sort of leading and helping the community, he's tracked that contamination back to a truck crash in 1992.
Wow.
And it's not the fault of the firefighters. They were doing the right thing to put out. It was a petrol tanker that crashed, just outside on the Great Western Highway, just outside of Medlow Bath. I was just looking at the pictures this morning. So to put out a fire of burning fuel, thousands of litres, tens of thousands of litres, foaming agent helps smother the fire. And his picture shows
It
the
keeps the
runoff.
oxygen out.
It keeps the oxygen out. And
It forms a seal.
water will just run off, but it can, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But that contamination, it's a hypothesis because we don't have data, but that contamination is still contaminating the local waterway to such a level that they've taken it out of the Sydney water supply system.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think we'll ever drink from that dam ever again.
Wow. So what anything we should be conscious of in terms of our drinking water relative to, say, PFAS? I mean, should we be looking at, again, filtration? Is there something we should be doing?
Look, to be honest,
Consciousness.
I would, in many ways, we should be able to leave that. If we're in a town water supply, we should be able to leave that to the authorities. They're pretty good at what they do. They had, I can't explain why, but there was a blindness to PFAS. A blindness. So Sydney Water didn't test for PFAS in our water supply until June last year.
June last year. Wow.
And
June 2024.
I'm talking 2024.
Oh my God.
US EPA changed the guidelines, and I got asked in the press, should we do the same? And I came up against one of my heroes, Dr. Kerry Chant, Chief Health Officer.
Yeah, I remember.
Health Officer.
Yeah, during the COVID period.
And she was a fixture of our society. And she said there's no known hotspots in the Sydney water supply system. And I knew there was because I had a PhD student that found it in platypus.
Some platypi or platypus had PFAS contamination, so to speak.
In its liver.
Whoa.
We were getting hold of dead platypus from Taronga Zoo that were handed in by people. We didn't kill any platypus, but it builds up in our liver, builds up in their liver. And we found one at Wingecarribee River, Berrima, was handed in by someone.
Way, Southern Highlands.
Absolutely. And it had...
Actually, they're very popular down there, platypus.
It is a hotspot of platypus.
100%.
Which is sensational.
I know that because I used to own property down there, and I remember there were a lot of platypus down there.
It's an absolutely beautiful
site.
But
that water down there was had PFAS in it. Was that amazing? Because I was always thought that would be like the purest water I've ever...
Fair assumption.
Yeah.
And I'm a water scientist. I worked in the catchment. I know the place really well. I was surprised. We've actually done testing. But Sydney Water made that claim without testing the water, which I still find unbelievable now.
How'd you go up against Kerry Chant, though? Did you win the debate?
I would never say anything bad about Kerry Chant. My line was she had been poorly advised.
Right.
And then the bad news came in July that Sydney Water did test, and lo and behold, the concentrations were extremely high up around Katoomba.
Right.
From the storages, there's a series of 5 storages between Blackheath and Katoomba, Upper Mountain Supply, which was within the then guidelines, but way, way, way above the US guidelines. And
this has been in the media too, by the way.
It has been in the media.
Which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because I was following it and I thought to myself, I need to talk to an expert on this. And I guess what we want to know is, do we need to worry about it? What do you think? I mean, you're not here to bag anyone or have a crack at anyone. Do you worry about it? And you're an expert.
Yes, I do. I find it bizarre that we didn't test our water supply. With 1992, if we accepted that, and New South Wales Fire and Rescue agree, it probably was that. I think there had been another truck crash where PFAS chemicals were used. Either way, how bad has that been? How long have people had that in their water supply? I think that is unforgivable that we hadn't known, and people have been exposed for a long time. Should we worry? I worry about that population up there. I've talked to them. I volunteer and help groups out all the time. I don't make any money in this space. It's not...
Yes, you've got a monetary interest in it.
No, none at all. But I've been to 2 community meetings. I'm in regular contact with John D., who's an incredible and wonderful leader of the community. New South Wales government will not agree with testing the blood of people that have been drinking that contaminated water. I think that is wrong. I think any any area where they have unwittingly become exposed, whether that's an occupational group like firefighters or in the manufacturing industry that perhaps was making pizza boxes or communities that have been drinking it, we should test it and we should then get the medical system to track them. Do a
Yep.
longitudinal study.
Yep.
Epidemiology 101
Yep.
is...
This is what Kerry Chan does.
That is exactly. But at the moment, they're advising the medicos not to do it. And I don't agree with that. And if it isn't a problem, we can learn from it.
Yeah.
And we can go, well, we were right. It wasn't a problem. There's other things to worry about. Get your weight down, be fit, avoid salt. You can't, it's not like tobacco or alcohol. If it's in the drinking water, you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
And particularly, I've never actually looked at people before, and parents in particular, and seen that look like, I came up here to give a clean life to my kids and family, and we've been drinking this contamination.
Does the water from those catchments, would that make it to, say, other parts of Sydney, or just sits in those?
Only the Blue Mountains.
So it's sort of restricted, so to speak.
Yep. But it possibly up to 80,000 people. So it can come down as far from Mount Victoria, Katoomba, as far down as Springwood from time to time. But it's particularly Wentworth Falls to Mount Victoria. Katoomba is the central point.
So you're quite relaxed about the water in the rest of Sydney.
I've seen the data.
Yeah,
yes,
it's pretty good.
It is good.
And if we say, one quick question for you, if you don't mind, Professor. If we say, if you're someone like me who's a bit obsessed with things, say, okay, I want to eliminate everything. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to eliminate everything, just in case Ian's wrong. Is there a situation? Because you said something really interesting at the beginning about pure H2O, pure water, pure H2O. Is there a way of remineralizing water once you've cleaned it up and put back in the minerals back in there that we need to have?
Absolutely is.
Right.
Yeah, you can remineralize it. I don't know the technical processes.
But there's probably some sort of contraption you could buy.
It's like pellets. You can pass it through, and it will get a nice electrolyte balance.
Yeah.
A bit like those energy drinks.
Yeah.
A lot.
Just no glucose in it.
A lot like that. But what I'd be worrying about is, do you like seafood? I do.
Yeah.
Seafood is associated with very high PFAS.
Really?
Yes. We need way more info. I don't want to give you bad news, but
but I've often thought about it. I actually have thought about mercury in seafood.
Yeah.
Because the doctors do tell pregnant women at a certain stage, stop eating seafood.
Yep, and particularly things like tuna.
Yeah.
The predatory fish.
Yeah.
But I love seafood. I've still eat it, but I'm much less, to be honest. And we don't test it. So we have, for example, New South Wales Food Authority. We should be regularly testing everything in our food chain.
Yeah.
The ABS data shows it's throughout us. We don't know how it's getting into a lot of the population. Is it coming from Scotch-guarded clothes, Teflon pans? I think it's mostly water and food.
Right.
Water and food.
Things consuming water.
And the other scary thing is there's a chance the peak has passed of PFAS. There's a chance it was actually worse in the 70s and 80s because they then started banning the chemicals. And we're actually probably looking at something way in the past.
Right. So just on fish though, can I just go back to fish for a second because you got me now? It's funny, when I buy fish, I tend not to buy the tunas and the salmons for a different reason. I tend not to buy, but because it's farmed. But I try to buy caught fish for a start.
Yes.
I try to buy fish that's bought further out, away from the coastline. I try to buy nothing bought in the harbour, and for all the obvious reasons. And notwithstanding that Sydney Harbour is quite clean, relatively speaking, to other harbours in the world, but still, we don't know what's going on the bottom of the ocean where everything's a harbour where everything's sitting. And then often I think about things like I try to buy smaller fish. Is there some sort of best practice around this sort of stuff? Should you be buying smaller fish and buying it from New Zealand or something?
It's a really interesting debate. I don't know. Every now and then I'll look through the science literature. There's much more on this in the States, and I think your principles are sound though. Keeping out of the estuaries. Definitely keep away from fresh water. I helped study the Belabula River near Orange, and the locals found one of the prized fish there is Murray cod,
Yep.
one of the great eating fish of
Yep.
Australia.
Quite oily, but quite a good fish to eat.
Yeah, they had the EPA got fisheries to test it in January of this year. They released the results in August. Don't know why there was a delay, but I got the results through the community and the media, through GIPA, Freedom of Information, that you could safely eat about 10 grams of that.
That's not much.
Before you went above. So keep away from freshwater fish. I wouldn't touch anything because it's so we lack the dilution of the ocean.
Yeah.
And I think your principles are good. But really, we need some testing here. It would be good to have something like the Food Authority or the industry just regularly test. Prawns, for example, the estuarine, they generally got high PFAS based on the American results.
I eat prawns all the time.
I love prawns.
Australians love prawns.
I'm going to get in.
Especially summer.
I get in trouble for saying this because I get told by government that I'm making people nervous. Don't talk about it, Ian.
But Ian, it's actually important to talk about these things, which is what this whole show is about. Because I mean, we want to live longer. We want to live better. We don't want to have the effects of things that have accumulated in our body, like even though it might not kill us, we don't want to have the effects of it. Could cause arthritis. Who knows what's going to cause?
Absolutely.
It could affect our eyesight, could affect us neurologically. We might become, we might suffer from dementia. We've got to give ourselves a fighting chance.
Absolutely.
And the problem is, a lot of us, not you, not me, but a lot of people just don't want to know about it. And the point of this whole show is so that people know about it.
Yep.
And then if you know about it, you can do something about it. And it's funny, you're talking about fish, and I got to a point now where I try not to drink water out of plastic bottles. I try to drink water out of glass bottles if possible. I try to drink filtered water if possible. And you can get a bit weird about it. But now, one of the things I was thinking about the other day, and we talked about earlier on, beef or cattle that eat grass, that are grass-fed at Cape Grim, maybe the best sort of protein you can get. You can get. I don't know if it's true enough, but then someone will say, "But you shouldn't eat too much red meat, Mark." Because I had a specialist, a medical specialist in here last week. He said you shouldn't eat too much red meat unless you slow cook it. He said because there's a problem when you grill meat.
Oh.
And he said because it's carcinogenic, the so-called crust.
Yes.
It's carcinogenic. And he said, so if you're going to eat red meat, don't eat it too often, but when you do it, eat it slow cooked like they used to cook it back in Europe.
Don't barbecue it.
Don't barbecue it. And I think, oh my God. So like it's getting to a point like where there's nothing I can do. But like and fish, we live in Australia, so we love fish and we love it and we love our prawns. But I think the point here is that we shouldn't panic. Everything's pretty good here in Australia, but at the same time we should be aware, and where we are aware, and if we can reduce, let's call so-called risks, we should attempt to reduce those risks.
Absolutely.
Without letting it dominate our lives.
Absolutely.
For someone like you, it must be a real head spin because you sometimes know too much about the topic. And do you find that sometimes even someone like you can overthink the issue? And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And get over worried?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, knowledge is power. And also, if you're concerned, talk to people, debate it, talk to your elected.
Are there any forums you can go to?
Good point.
Around PFAS, for example?
I'm going to encourage you to talk to your elected representative.
Right.
And I've found that really interesting, and watching what happens with the politicians, local, state and federal.
Do you think they know enough about it? Or?
No, they don't.
No.
And I've been lucky to be part of a couple of parliamentary inquiries. New South Wales has just partly reported on one. The Commonwealth is about to report. So they're seeking that information. But particularly if you live regionally, ask your council, because they run the water supply.
Right.
And they're struggling to meet the higher standards. And some of the towns like, up in the Warrialda, up in the Inverell area, they have high PFAS detected, they're struggling. They're really struggling to produce high quality water that we take for granted. But talk to your elected officials. Where you buy your product, ask them, what has this been tested?
Do you do email, like mail outs, or do you run a website, or do you do like an information forum somewhere?
No, I tend to do science and
Yeah.
publish it.
Yeah.
And then I work with communities.
Right.
So for example, one of the communities, and I'd rather not name where they're from,
Yep.
the farmers are really concerned about this in their product.
Yeah.
And they don't want to let on too much because the property value or their product value could plummet.
Yeah, totally.
And cattle can't take much. There's been a study done. They can't take much before it contaminates their meat.
Wow.
You're quite right about that. And how do we know? Because EU tests for it. We don't necessarily test for it here.
The European Union.
European Union. So to export,
Yeah.
a lot of our food is tested.
Yeah.
Internally, it's not tested to the same degree. But farmers are very concerned, and it is out there in a lot of agricultural rivers. And it does not take much before it builds to what is regarded as a hazardous concentration.
Wow, this is scary. I mean, I guess over the next, as our population grows, as we get more intense farming, as there is overflow from population growth in the next 20, 30, 40 years, it could potentially the risk, unless it gets managed, could actually exceed the benefit of even eating meat, for example. Like, you just don't know. But this has been really good. Professor Ian Wright, I really appreciate, most importantly, your honesty.
Thank you.
And the integrity you bring to this, but the integrity being scientific integrity, not scaremongering, but scientific integrity based on publications and your own research. This has been fantastic. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate your interest in the topic and asking me a lot of really difficult questions. Very challenging. I've got homework to do.
Good. If you find out something we didn't get an answer properly, please let us know and we'll put it up on our website.
Fantastic. Yeah, plastic pipes. I've got to work on that.
Thanks, Professor Ian Wright.
Thanks so much.